Well, for more, we're joined now from Sydney, Australia by Antony Loewenstein. He's an independent journalist and author of the Palestine Laboratory, and he was based in occupied East Jerusalem between 2016 and 2020. Good to have you back with us, Antony. Can we start with the situation in Tel Aviv? We know Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting for his political survival. He's being criticised on all fronts, really, from members of his far-right coalition, from the general Israeli public for the perceived intelligence failure that led to the October 7 attack, and now from hostages' families who say that their loved ones are being endangered by the Israeli onslaught and ground operation in Gaza. What do you think is in his playbook right now? How do you think the Prime Minister is managing the situation?
Nothing more than political survival. You know, in the last day or so, the families of the Israeli hostages met Netanyahu, and afterwards they released a statement. They spoke to the media, and their response was anger. They were deeply dissatisfied with Netanyahu's response, and essentially they came out and said very clearly that they believe that the hostages held by Hamas could be released if Israel releases all its Palestinian political prisoners. And let's be clear, Israel has thousands upon thousands of political prisoners, many of which are there without being charged. There's no charge and they're held indefinitely, including huge numbers of kids under 18 years old. Now, Israel no doubt won't agree to that idea, but the truth is that they are unbelievably angry. The far right, as you say, in his coalition and frankly in the broader Israeli community are demanding blood, more pummeling of Gaza, more deaths and more anger. But he's also, of course, worried about the idea that even in the last 24 hours, he released a tweet, which was deleted within 3 hours, essentially blaming everybody else but himself for the complete failures in the last 3 weeks. The failures on October 7 and many other failures since. He is a man desperate to stay on to power. And even now, all Israeli opinion polls show that the vast majority of Israelis, even those who supported him in the past, want him to go, to resign. Now, he won't do that yet, but he is, I would say, does not have a long political life ahead of him, probably.
Antony, can we talk about the alarming number of civilian casualties, men, women and children of Gaza that's growing by the hour? We know figures show that more than 8,000 people have now been killed in Gaza since October 7, even though the US President Joe Biden has moved to cast some doubt on that figure. Humanitarian organisations, even the United Nations, are saying that that figure is reliable, and the figures coming out of the health ministry in Gaza have always been reliable. At what point do you think will countries like the United States, the UK and other Western powers concede that this growing toll is unacceptable and finally call for a ceasefire and, I guess beyond that, for Israel to be held to account?
I fear that the only way that those Western powers, including the country I'm in currently, Australia, and many others, the US, EU, will call for a ceasefire is if they fear and perceive that Israel is losing. In other words, there's no actual strategic benefit, which is clearly to be said now, in Israel doing this. I mean, there's no evidence that what Israel is doing is contributing to its goals. It is pummeling Gaza, killing huge amounts of Palestinian civilians, no doubt killing some Hamas fighters as well. And I think the US's position here seems to be, from what I'm reading and hearing, they're putting pressure on Israel behind the scenes to let in more aid, to restart internet and phone access. Now, all that's welcome, but it's like saying, giving money to an arsonist, they then light your house on fire, then you ask the arsonist to put the fire out. I mean, it's an absurd situation. And frankly, seeing in the last weeks, and especially this last weekend, huge amounts of protests around the world, from the global south to the global north, essentially saying the same thing, that Israel's position, its pummeling of Gaza, is utterly counterproductive and is achieving nothing apart from building a new generation of people who will loathe Israel. And frankly, what concerns me, and I say this as someone Jewish, is there's no doubt there's been huge amounts of Islamophobia in the last 3 weeks and frankly since 9/11. There's also been a growth in anti-Semitism. There's no doubt that's true in some parts of the world. Actual attacks against Jews, physical attacks or threats against Jews. And that worries me as a human and as a Jew. And I fear the longer this Israeli bombardment continues, that is only going to worsen.
Okay, Antony Loewenstein, we'll leave it there for now. But thank you so much, as always, for sharing your thoughts with us.